Welcome to the D-Shift podcast, where we provide inspiration, motivation, and education to help you transition from the challenges of divorce to discover the freedom and ability to live life on your own terms. Are you ready? Let's get this shift started. Hello, and welcome to another episode of the D-Shift podcast. And sometimes you just have to get out of your comfort zone and do something a little bit different to help yourself get started, get moving forward. If you're feeling like, I'm kind of in a rut here, or I need some change in my life. So I have an amazing guest on the show today, Teri Bach. Teri is a travel coach. She's a former psychotherapist with over 28 years of experience, and she's recently made this shift, and I'm so excited to learn more about this. But she really wants to help women over 50 who want to rediscover themselves after some kind of major loss or life transition. She specializes in intentional travel, and Teri's going to tell us what that is all about, and how to use new environments and experiences to really gain clarity, confidence, and a sense of purpose after you've gone through one of these big life events. So, Teri, welcome.
Thank you. Thank you, Mardi.
Well, and it's so nice to have you because I am a traveler. I have loved traveling all my life, and I have almost exclusively traveled on my own. Even when I was married, it never seemed like it was, that there was an opportunity to do much more than, camping trips and stuff. Yes. But yes. Real travel. So this is something that it can also be really uncomfortable for women to do on their own. And I love that you're helping out with this. But before we get into all the good stuff, tell us a little bit about why did you move from psychotherapy to being a travel coach, and what kind of got you into this new area of life for yourself?
Yeah, so I loved being a therapist, but I don't know how things are in the world. I didn't love the business of therapy, and especially in California where it's very rigid rules. And the major thing that made me change into coaching, so I did money coaching in between what I'm doing now and psychotherapy, was I wanted to spend more time with my mom. And she was living in Fargo, North Dakota. And so I had purchased a home in Minnesota at the lake so I could go back there in the summers and spend time with her and take care of her. Well, I ended up moving back there, and you can't, in psychotherapy, you have to get licensed and go through all of the hoops again when you move to a different state. And I just didn't want to go through all that. And so I thought, I'll be a coach. And so I needed to do coaching that, kind of did a deep dive with people. And so I did the money coaching for a while. I ended up taking care of my mom. I had moved to Minnesota full-time by then. And after she died, I was lost. I had been her caregiver for a few years by that time. And I didn't know who I was. And I had been independent. I had been married years before, but had been divorced for 30 years. So I was used to being independent, traveling, doing all of that stuff on my own. And yet, after my mom died and my role as caregiver ended, I felt completely lost, really unsettled. And I kept asking myself, who am I now? And what do I want for the rest of my life? Because I had been so focused on my mom during those years that I was just put on the back burner. And so now it's like, I don't know how to focus on myself. I was really thrown, even though she was 98 years old. So I knew it was going to happen at some point. And so an opportunity came up for me, and I hadn't traveled in years because I had been taking care of my mom and other things. An opportunity came up for me to go to Rome, Italy with other entrepreneurs. And I hesitated. I can't believe now that I hesitated, but I didn't know anybody going on the trip, even the people putting it on, I didn't know. and I didn't have a current passport, and it was coming up real soon. And I thought, you know what? This is the change I need in my life. And so I said yes and got my passport in time, went to Rome, Italy for a month. We stayed in apartments, we had co-working spaces, and we had meetings, and we had a lot of free time. That trip was life-changing for me because I came back feeling the confidence I used to feel. I just rediscovered myself. I found this courageous self again. And, all the things that I felt like I had lost came back to me. And I had a clarity about my life and about my business and about everything. And so this opportunity came up. I believe in jumping in on opportunities. This opportunity recently came up like a year ago or so, and to be a travel coach. And I thought, I know how much travel has changed my life. And I really want to help other women who are older, like I am, have the same kind of change in their lives that I did. So
Right.
that's how I got into it.
Yeah, and I love these stories when people tell them because I think it's like we can all see ourselves in what what you talked about. I was
Right,
my husband's caregiver for 8 years before he passed away, my second husband. And I mean there's all of these things that there's all of these commonalities that we have,
right.
and at the same time, I think for a lot of women who have been a caregiver, been in relationships, kind of had this limited ability to, to get out and to do things, it can be really overwhelming to think of leaving your house. That can even be stressful.
Absolutely.
It
Yes.
was funny for me after taking care of my husband for so many years. Um, Leaving the house and not having to think of, do I have a respite caregiver in here?
Exactly. Mhm.
How long am I going to be gone for? Do they know where I'm going to be if they have to get hold of me? Like I was so programmed into that the first couple of weeks I'd be like, I can just go to the grocery store whenever I want. It was
Exactly.
very exciting to go to the
Well,
grocery store.
freeing and
Yeah.
scary at the same time. Yes. Yes.
Yeah. And so let's talk a little bit about why is that? Why does that happen to us? And I think you have an amazing expertise on this because of your background in psychotherapy. But why do we get so afraid to take these steps outside our comfort zone? And why does it seem to get more pronounced as we get older?
Good questions. I think that I think what I talk about most is losing that role in life, because as you were talking about, you get so focused on that other person. I too kind of put myself on the back burner for those years. And so it's new, and I know your focus is more on divorce, and that's certainly a major life transition as well. And so I think when women are coming out of this divorce or being a caregiver or being an empty nester, whatever that life transition is, it that change of role I think is huge. And I don't think we give it enough
Yeah.
credit.
Hmm.
Um, because I think when, our roles in life are really, um, they become part of our life so much. It's like becomes our structure and it becomes our identity. And, it's kind of what we talk about when we're communicating with people and all of that. And so when that role goes away, it's unsettling.
Yeah.
I use the
Yeah.
word unsettling a lot because I think it is unsettling. And sometimes it's kind of a surprise.
Yeah.
It's like, like in my situation, I was kind of surprised I felt that way after my mom died.
Yeah.
And I think when you're going through a divorce too, even if, especially maybe if you were the one who wanted the divorce, um, you're kind of surprised that it feels so unsettling
Yeah.
when you're single now. And especially if you I was going to say, especially if you don't have children, but I think even if you do have children still at home, when you're going through the divorce, it's still such a change in role. And so I think that there's a grieving that has to go on
Right.
first. And I think in our society in particular, we don't do a very good job of grieving. You
Right.
know, we do a little bit better if somebody died, then we expect somebody to go through a grieving process. But when you're losing a role in life, that's a loss.
Right.
That's a
Yeah.
loss that I think has to be addressed
Yep.
first before you can move on. So, I think what happens is we feel this pressure to hurry up and move on before we're ready to move on. And so I
Yeah.
think part of what you were talking about is we're not ready to go outside yet. We're not ready to face people. And I know my situation's a little different when I got a divorce because my daughter also died during like two
Oh,
months within
oh my
that
gosh,
period
I'm
of
so
time. So I
sorry.
lost two roles all at the same time. I remember going to get groceries and I'd hear some mother yelling at her child, and I'd leave my cart full of groceries there and I'd walk out,
Yeah.
or things like that. I think when you go through a loss, and, it varies for different people, but I think it's hard to find normal again
Yeah. Yeah.
for a
Yeah.
while.
I think that that whole idea of normal, and one of the things I talk to my clients about is you create your own normal. So stop thinking about that
Exactly.
normal that existed back then.
Right.
That's done.
No.
That's already not normal anymore.
Yeah.
So I think that that is really important. And I like this idea, and you use the term intentional travel. Can you talk a little bit more about that? Because I
Yes.
have always been a traveler. We were talking before
Yes.
before my first big travel trip was I was 17, and our high school um did a trip to Scotland. I was in Canada at the time, and one of our teachers was from Scotland. So he agreed to be the chaperone, and two other parents came with, and we went to Scotland for the Easter break, and it was phenomenal. And that kind of put the bug in me about travel. But not everybody is comfortable. Not everybody's done travel, or it's not something.
No,
Particularly, it's funny in the United States people don't travel the way they do, say, in Europe and other countries where they go to different countries all the time. Whereas the States,
exactly.
tend to stay
And
in the
I think
States. That's
different pieces, like I grew up in the Midwest, upper Midwest, hardly anybody at that time was traveling.
right,
And yet when I moved to California, and that's where I did, was out there for 28 years, everybody traveled. And almost everybody I met had gone to Europe. I hadn't been
right,
to Europe yet when I moved out there.
right.
And so I think it really depends. And travel's not for everyone. And I want to say this up front before I forget. When I talk about travel and I tell my story about Italy, a lot of people assume I mean that you have to go to Asia or Europe or somewhere far away to find yourself or to rediscover yourself or to get benefit out of intentional travel. You don't. You merely want to get out of your house. You want to get out of for a period of time. And there's no magic about how long that is. Just get out of your house, go to the town next door, get an Airbnb or a hotel, and just get out of your environment for a short period of time, even will give you a lot of benefit.
Yeah, and thank you for saying that, because I think you're right. If you want to, like, for instance, I have this incredible longing to go see like the amazing parks in Utah. I just want to see them. There's just something I know I want to do. And so that could be an intentional travel. So
Absolutely.
yeah,
Yes.
so talk about
Yes.
this idea of intentional travel, Terry.
Okay. And I used to call myself a travel coach, and everybody thought I was a travel agent. So I tried to be a little more descriptive. I could call it transformational travel as well. Um, Basically, so think about your last vacation for the audience. If you're like a lot of people, when we go on vacation, we try to see all the sights. And, people have said, oh, you're going here, you have to see this, and you have to see this, and you have to see this. And so when you come home, you're exhausted. And I've heard many people say, oh my gosh, I need a vacation from my vacation, right?
Right.
Work piled up and stuff while you were gone. So intentional travel is more like slow travel. And I call it intentional travel because when I'm working with somebody, we get them to a place where they're a little bit more in a neutral place. So I make sure she's done some grief work, or send her to a therapist if it's, a big need. And then we work on beliefs. I use tapping or emotional freedom techniques so I can quickly help somebody bring down their anxiety or bring down their fears or change a belief that they might have. Like a lot of women say, oh, it's too late for me. I'm too old. Or, what are people going to say? Or, whatever those beliefs are, we can shift that. And then we start planning a trip that's going to give the woman, the client, who what kind of change she wants to make. So we want to look at what are some of the things you maybe have wished you were. Like, I wish I were more outgoing. I wish I could get out of my comfort zone more. I'd like to build my life into something a little bigger than it's been the last 20 years or 30 years or whatever. Um, I want to get more comfortable talking to strangers or, whatever that is. And then look at have you ever dreamed about what you wanted your life to look like? Because most of us have a dream that's been shoved down for a very long time. I just a few years ago rediscovered that I had talked about writing in Italy, writing in Europe in high school. I had completely forgotten about it, but it's something that started coming up for me without realizing it. It's been living in me all those decades. So we want to kind of rediscover that. And then we plan a trip with some activities and a place. So if you're grieving, you're not going to go to New York City or someplace loud and chaotic. We want to pick a place, and maybe you already have a place in mind. And we plan some activities for you to do while you're on this trip that are going to give you the kind of transformation that you're looking for. So that's, for me, I do a lot of journaling. Now, I hardly ever journal when I'm at home. I know it's something that I like. I love to write, and yet I don't do it.
Right.
And yet I journal almost every day when I'm traveling.
Yeah. So I love
Yeah.
this whole idea. I think this is phenomenal. And I really appreciate how you're not a travel agent. So I think that's really important. And you're not going to be, just firing everybody off to the Caribbean or wherever it may be. It's
No,
really customized
it
to what
really
the
is.
client wants to
Yes.
experience.
And the
And
last, oh, can I
oh, go
tell you the
ahead.
last
Yeah.
piece then is I call it the integration piece. So, and by the way, I'm available during the trip for support if needed. And I was telling you, I want to be building up a mastermind, a group of women, a community of women for support so that everybody's available for support when each one is on their trip. Not everybody's going to be traveling at the same time. And then the last piece, the integration piece, is really about integrating all this transformation that you've learned about yourself, about your life, what changes you want to make, because you're coming back into an environment that hasn't changed.
Right.
It's still the same as when you left it, but you have changed. And so we want to bring all of that into your current environment to see what needs to change now here in your current environment, because if you don't change that, you're gonna, all these beautiful changes you've made on your trip, you're gonna try to fit them into your current environment. And we don't want that. We
Right.
don't want that. We want the current environment to accommodate who you have become now.
Yeah, yeah. And like I said, I just think that's such an incredible experience because I do like a holistic approach to this because I have heard, a lot of women will it was funny, I just did a cruise, it was like a conference on a cruise thing. And I was talking to a lady that was there, and she had just gone through a divorce. She was in her 70s. She'd just gone through a divorce, and she decided to go on this cruise by herself. And she wasn't prepared, and she didn't want to talk to people. And she was like sitting there, and she goes, "Well, everybody's here with their partner." And I'm like, "Well, you're on a
Sure.
cruise. Like, what were you thinking was going to be on here?" And,
Right.
she noticed that I was with another group, and it was almost all women. So she came over and she talked to us because she thought we were a group of
Sure.
single women. And and
Right.
so it was kind of interesting because she was saying she actually felt more lonely on the cruise than she did
Yes.
at home. And so, we everybody kind of said, "Hey, well, we're going on this excursion, come with us." And she was like, "No, no, no,
Right.
I just want to stay on the ship." And so it was like, okay, that's your choice, but she was obviously not prepared
And
mentally.
right.
And
Right.
she just
Yeah.
assumed that a change of venue would cure all
Yeah.
ills, and that really wasn't.
No, it
So I
helps.
like,
But
yeah,
but you're
yeah,
bringing yourself with you.
right,
Yes.
right,
So yeah, you do. I mean, I would have maybe had her look for a cruise where, because there are cruises that accommodate more single people too, or at least
right.
have a single component to it, a solo traveler. Um, so yeah, there are a lot of
Yeah.
work that she might have done that would have made the trip so much more
And
fun
I can
for
I can
her.
just imagine, like, if you're a beach person, maybe going to the Outer Banks or something and renting an Airbnb, or
Right.
staying in a hotel if it's a shorter trip, and then just spending days, walking on the beach and looking at the shells, and or going and
Absolutely.
seeing the
Yeah.
wild horses. Like, that would be so amazing to do as a
Yeah.
solo person, and you wouldn't feel
Exactly.
awkward because that's going to be what a lot of people there are doing as
Sure.
well. So yeah,
Sure.
yeah,
And eventually you can get to the place where she was, where you go on a cruise, and it doesn't matter if you're the only solo person,
right, right.
but she wasn't there yet.
Well, and I think it's got, and I know we're almost out of time, but I think it's got a little
Okay.
bit to do with personalities. I will talk
It
to
does.
everybody. I will make friends in the grocery store. It's just what I
Me
do.
too.
But
Yes.
that's not everybody, and that's
No.
okay. And so if you're one of those people that is maybe a little less I don't want to say outgoing because that's not correct, but a little a
Yeah.
little less interested in talking to strangers,
Sure.
then maybe creating a vacation where you have more space so you're not around a lot of people would actually be
Exactly.
more appropriate. So,
Right.
Teri, this is
Yeah.
absolutely fantastic. Now, you have a gift for everybody. Can you tell us a little bit about that?
It's a quiz. I love taking quizzes. So it's called Stuck, Spinning, and Ready for More. And so it really helps you decide kind of where you are. Are you feeling, are you stuck? Or, and then the results that you get back will kind of give you some idea of where to go from there, depending on how what comes up for you during that. And then at the end of the quiz, there's a chance for you to reach out to me if you want to, and set up a complimentary clarity session. I call it Reclaim Your Spark. Clarity session where we can talk about what came up for you in the quiz, and maybe I can get you started on what's next for you, or what to look at next.
Great. And I will make sure that's in the show notes. Now, before we let you get off the call here, what do you think is the biggest takeaway you'd like everybody to remember?
The biggest takeaway I have for this time, especially after 50, and I mean, there's nothing magical about the number 50, but But I think is that when we go through these major life transitions, it isn't the ending. It's not the end of our lives. It's really an invitation for more. Because now we don't have a lot of the responsibilities we used to have. We have it's like now we can do whatever we
Right.
want. You just have to figure out what that is, but it's a joyous time, not
Yeah.
the end.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Fantastic. Terry, if people want to find out more about what you do or talk to you about your intentional travel coaching services, what's the best way to do that?
The quiz is a really good place to start. And then they'll be on my mailing list. And so they start, or on my email list. So they start hearing more and more about intentional travel and going through a life transition. They can also reach out to me at Teri. It's a little more complicated. Teri, Teri, at untappedpotentialcoaching.com.
Great. And I will make sure that is in the show notes as well. Terry,
Okay,
thanks
thank
so
you.
much for sharing this. And you've got me all thinking, where would I like to go next now? Now I've got the travel bug again. Thank you so
Good.
much for this
I'm leaving
conversation.
next month for 6 months. So yeah, I'm going to be traveling and working and traveling and
Well,
yeah,
that's the way to go nowadays. We can do it all from our laptop, right? So it
exactly.
works
Yeah.
out very well. Terry, thanks so much for sharing your wisdom and expertise today.
Thank you, Marty, for having me on.
And thank you, everybody, for listening to this episode of The D Shift. And don't forget to tune in to the next one. Thanks for listening and supporting the D Shift podcast. If you would like to attend live trainings by our amazing guests and have a chance to ask questions and get answers from our experts, join the D Shift crew. For more details and to sign up, head on over to www.divorcecoachforwomen and click on the podcast page.